Welcome to Nuts and Bolts. My name is Joe Hedzima, and today's session is entitled Organizational and People Issues. Most ventures which fail do so because of people issues, not technology, market, or funding issues. What people are needed to take the venture from paper to reality? How do you identify good team members and avoid problems? How do you build an external and internal team? And how do you develop and implement a philosophy for operating a business? These are important questions that we're going to try to give you some insights on today. Now, this session was originally scheduled to be given by Joost Bonsen, our co-instructor for the course, but Joost had some family issues to deal with. So near the last moment, he recommended Habib Haddad to handle this session. And Habib has put together quite a panel of people to do this. And let me show you that right now. Habib Haddad is the founding managing partner of E14 Fund, which is a venture fund affiliated with the MIT Media Lab, where he is a research associate. He's put together a great panel that I'll let him introduce more fully, but their names are Clavin Chen, managing partner at E14 Fund, Wardah Inam, co-founder and CEO of Overjet, a dental startup using artificial intelligence, Adam Bercu, founder and CEO of Kiwi Technologies, which uses drones for precise full field spraying from the air, and Nan-Wei Gong, co-founder and CEO of Figure 8, a motion analysis platform. I'll turn the panel over to Habib. Because of a technical issue, we did not start the recording of this session at the beginning, so we're going to pick it up in process. I hope you enjoy it.
These which are not just work.
That's great. And maybe quick follow-up question. Again, Wardah, you can feel free to jump in, or also Adam or Nan-Wei as well on that. So it's part of the exercise is putting the culture on paper. So saying we want radical transparency. We want to make sure we're enjoying it. We want to make sure we're hard workers, and we will not tolerate these things. Like sometimes what we're looking for is a good thing, but like the to-dos is interesting to put, but the to-don'ts are sometimes even more interesting. But what's really hard is how to make sure it actually sticks. Maybe say like a few tricks that you've done or a few things that you've evolved that around making sure this sticks and you keep reinforcing it, whether you reinforce it as a CEO or whether you help others reinforce it as well. But how do you make sure that this stays alive and not just kind of aspirational quotes on a piece of paper?
So from my perspective, a friend of mine gave me some good advice. I think it comes from Amazon, where they have some values and they keep on instilling that in everything. We don't go that crazy with it, but in general, we did state out our 7 values that we believe in, informed, in all hand meeting of everyone. But then trying to every week we actually focus on a value as well. So, for example, a value could be, for us, one is ownership, right? That would be feeling, and not ownership in just work, but more ownership of the, feeling more ownership of the company, etc., and doing things not just because you have to do it, but because you would want to, as you are part of the company. So instilling that every week, I think that's something that we bring out and use some of that Amazon thing of using those words again and again, as well as okay, X showed, ownership, we'll use that word so that everybody gets starts thinking about it. But I think that's something that at least we copied from another company.
That's great. And Adam, you have you have the advantage of, at least pre-pandemic, to have a pretty awesome workshop where a lot of people go and really build giant stuff together. So does that make it easier for you to build the culture? Maybe you tell us more about what it is that you do and how you think about culture.
Well, as a CEO, there's a lot of pressure on you.
Do you want to first say about a quick word about the company, just to give some context?
Sure. Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Adam Bercu. I'm the founder and CEO of Kiwi, and Kiwi specializes in agricultural robotics, closing the loop on efficacy and implementation of applying agricultural products to farms intelligently. And we use computer vision, some light machine learning, and large-scale robotics to achieve this. So, like Habib mentioned, we build these giant flying monster machines to go work on farms and collect a ton of data. And the culture here is certainly very hands-on. The culture here is very proactive. The culture here is very it's creative and technically deep. And those are, I listed positive things. There are also negative things. And those positive things and negative things are very much my own positive and negative things. This is really an area where we can write whatever we want on a piece of paper. We can have meetings of whatever, but not to add more pressure to the CEO, but there really is all eyes on you. And I can't stress this enough, that you build the culture of the company, especially at the early stage, by just what you do every day. And I really believe that it's whatever you care about and whatever your values are, become the values of the company quickly. You can do a lot of work to change that. And I think it's important work to do to look at the negatives and address them. But in my experience, at least, and it's sometimes easy to forget. You feel like you're in this great team all doing it together, but the eyes on the CEO, it's real. So leading by example is just, you have to start there.
That's great. Thanks, Adam. Hey, maybe next question to Nan-Wei. Nan-Wei, maybe you can introduce yourself in Figure 8 a little bit. And in particular, maybe focus on how you as CEO have held on to culture, a company that's growing, that's changing, for Figure 8 in particular, you started out with one kind of go-to-market strategy and you ended up focusing it slightly differently. Like, how do you hang on to culture in this really dynamic startup environment too?
Thank you, Clavin. So hello, everyone. My name is Nan-Wei Gong, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Figure 8. I'm Media Lab PhD, graduated in 2013. Really got into the whole starting a company thing from the 100K competition. I think that the building the culture, I think one of the reasons that really draw me to start a company is to build the culture, because I have experienced work environments that I don't like. And so starting from finding a co-founder and looking for everyone, hiring everyone, I think it's just not about the skill sets, but I think from day one, we keep asking, why do you want to join the startup? There must be a reason why you want to join a teeny tiny company and work with me. Is it because what do you need in life that I can provide you for the next 3 to 4
What went
years?
wrong in your childhood that makes you want to take
what is
quest,
it?
right?
Come on, have a sip of the hot cocoa. But what is it? Like, there are people, we had very, very successful hiring of the first engineering team. And mostly there are people that's in the middle of their career, and that they know that they're ready to take on more responsibilities. So I think starting from asking, why do you want to join a startup, and know that the people that we hire is not here for just a salary. Obviously, we have health insurance, dental insurance. Also, we have really good 401k plan, and we are market rate competitive comp. But that's not the reason why you're here. You're here because there's something that's missing in the career, and this is the environment that half of it. I will ask people, what do you want, and how much flexibility? Is it 10% of flexibility that you want, a potential of change your career? Like, we have scientists that join and now doing customer success because they realize that actually they don't want to do science. And I'm like, all right, here are the milestones you have to hit. Hardware engineers become our best iOS engineer. And what we did is, all right, here, if you want to do it for the first year, I'll hire a mentor, but then you have to follow the program. Otherwise, you're out. So I think everyone has a lot to gain, not just from like working in a company that could potentially become a unicorn, which is the cliche of joining a startup. But there's a lot more than that. I think we have a lot of great success of like asking those questions during hiring. yes, I should work more on building my routine. Adam, I know.
It sounds like a growth mindset is an important criterion for working at Figure Eight, and maybe one of your fundamental values. You ask that, you have that dialogue at hiring. Has it been particularly challenging to hang on to values in the work from home, distributed pandemic environment where you're not necessarily together as much as you were before?
I think for us, because we're digital health, we're a health company, so we have physicians, we have people from 20 years old to 60 years old. We just have such a spread of different types of personalities. So I think we don't, they did nothing really changed. It's not like we used to hang out and we're all like in the same group doing the same activities. So I think that the scenario is a little bit different from other startups. That's mainly young people.
I just want to pick on one comment that Adam mentioned. We don't want to go too much on culture, though it's extremely important. We can probably do like a whole 2 hours on culture. But Adam mentioned something extremely important. I see it in every single one of you, Wardah, Adam, and Nan-Wei, which is it's all about the CEO, but also the CEO evolves. Wardah, when is working on dentistry, but she probably knows a lot, almost like as much about teeth as any dentist. Adam, you as a founder also have evolved tremendously. I mean, when you were a hacker, you would build things, you would hack things, but now, you have a team, you've hired people much older than you, much more experienced than you, and you're able to kind of have people follow you. Tell us more about your own growth as a leader and how you saw that reflect, whether negatively or positively, over different chapters on the organization.
So for me, that growth, and thank you, by the way, that's one of the nicest things that anyone could ever tell me. Thank you. It's really requires a jumping into, it's similar to jumping into ice water, where you have to rip off this Band-Aid quickly and really just become open to criticism in a very deep way, really be honest with yourself, look in the mirror, and it's really uncomfortable to deeply recognize things you need to change and know that you can change them and have the confidence to know you can see light at the end of it. And a vulnerability, I think, is required that I'm trying to instill in culture in the company for all of us to be able to talk about where we need to improve and collectively do that. And it does get easier as you do that. And in some ways, it's a bit of a thrill. It's sort of like being completely honest with a best friend or something that can really can open you up. So I think that vulnerability is a big part of growth and a good culture.
That's great. So I think what we talked a lot about in the past 5 to 10 minutes is about mindset. First principles mindset. I think the way we like to think a lot about it when we talk to our founders is there's a mindset and there's systems and there's tools. And so the mindset is basically the first layer of the stack, the infrastructure upon which you build your culture, but you build everything around it. Your hiring structure, incentive, your performance review, how to deal with a bad hire, how to demote someone. Maybe for this next part, we can talk about all that stuff, the tough decisions that you've had to do, but maybe start some of the easier ones. So thinking about, moving from mindset to systems, maybe we can talk a bit about hiring. Nan-Wei, you talked a lot about hiring. I'd love to hear your thoughts and also Wardah's thoughts as well on that, since I know that you both are now very proactive in that hiring, obviously Adam as well, about your hiring process, but how to make sure that you can put a hiring process, you have some questions you yourself as a CEO that you ask, but how to make sure you have a framework that would hit and will help you kind of anticipate not having a bad hire or having a good hire, kind of that process, and how do you also empower others to do that as well in the organization? Maybe Nan-Wei, you can start, or maybe you actually
yeah. Hiring is very tough, and I think as a technical founder, the tough part is it's very easy for us to evaluate who is a good engineer, but it's really hard for us to evaluate who is a good salesperson, or who, when you're looking for domain experts, it's really hard for us to evaluate people that's not from our field, like sales and marketing. How do you even evaluate that? So if I learned anything for the past couple of years is that just be firm about the milestone and fire very quickly, which is obviously very, very difficult as the first time being the CEO. It's just hard. But I think setting up expectations, say if you don't hit those targets, I will fire you in a nice way. It's really helpful. And the learning process. Yeah.
Wardah, do you mind also sharing your perspective on that, on hiring?
Yeah, so I think when I started, I was lucky, and I thought I took that luck as like, oh, I'm such a good hiring person. I have like a gut feeling, and like I'm gonna use my gut feeling. But I think I did do some like wrong hires, and I think that was a gut check in a way. So I've gone now completely on the process route, which is there is a book, I think it's called Who. WHO, and that's a good book to read for people who are thinking about hiring. That gave me a basic a basic process of how to hire. But I think the best thing, at least now, like hopefully I'm not proven wrong on this, but my new thing is giving an actual assessment as close to the task that person will do. And it could be a longer assessment, etc., but like something that they're actually going to do rather than like brain teasers and like other stuff that, you're just checking how how smart they are, etc. So I think from my perspective, I've kind of gone from like this completely, I know how to hire to like, okay, people are so different, and using a process here, of course, like using a little bit of your gut, but like a lot of it is, following a process, having 4 or 5 candidates when you're trying to hire that one person, making sure that you've assessed everyone, and you're very, very confident. I think that's been, at least now, my understanding. So we are hiring. So I know you all want to do a startup, but the best way to learn is probably joining a startup. So if you're interested in joining a fast growing startup, please email me. Sorry, I had to put this plug here.
Always
Sorry.
selling, that's great.
Me too.
Yeah, and Wardah, maybe a related question we got from the audience. Jake asks about compensation. So in the hiring process, hopefully it ends up with a capstone of negotiating fair compensation. And of course, that can be really tricky. It can be really messy in a startup environment. Some people are really risk averse, they need more cash, or they have a mortgage or kids. Other people want to go all equity. Then you're comparing it with big tech where there's maybe big compensation packages. Like, could you say a little bit about how you think about what's fair and how you get to a fair kind of cash and options or cash and equity compensation for people?
Yeah, so that's a very tough question. I think, we add another element to it as well, which is what is everybody else getting paid? So like, when if somebody coming in and the fairness might be something else, but like if everybody else is here, this person might not just like, we might not just be able to pay that because, everyone else is at a certain level as well, which kind of started off, of course, low, because, everybody did take a big hit on their salaries and took the compensation. There is, the way I like to, when I'm hiring, I like to express it to the people that I'm talking to, or the future employees, is basically, wherever we start off from, we will make sure that you are compensated well over the long term. Even if we are starting off with a cut, or whether this is not representing what your true value is, we will not be afraid of increasing your salary, etc., as you perform, as well as being able to get to the market comp as we decrease risk by doing well. So I think I take it as like just a starting point. This is not what your salary will be. Your salary will be determined by what else is happening, like how well we're doing, as well as how well you're performing as well. So I think that has been at least where it's not like this is it and this is what it's going to be. So it makes the discussion a little lighter, and people don't have that much weight on their shoulders to just like, this is their only chance to negotiate as much as they can.
Adam, I think you've got something to say on this point, huh? It looks like you want to jump in.
Well, yeah, to the first point of hiring, I would definitely second Ward. I mean, it's easy to think that when you have that original founding group, it's awesome to have, you know, rock stars, that that is a great feeling. But I think for everyone, it's just human. It's not a matter of if, it's just when you're going to make bad hires. And I, you know, I'm of the opinion that that's sort of okay. There's so much that we have to do, and there is that balance of process and gut, where if you went full on the process side, your pace of hiring would just be far too slow to get anything done. You'd spend so much time hiring that, on the other hand, it's just accept that you're going to get 15% wrong. And that's sort of a cost of doing business. But if that little bit of wrong enables you to do other things, and you just got to keep the pace of hiring up, and thinking along the lines of making some decision is better than making no decision, and keep moving on. And really, unfortunately, the cost of being wrong is a lot cheaper than the cost of making nothing. So that's with one. And I love and implement also at Kiwi, Wardah's perspective of the comp discussion up front is it's a discussion of mutual trust long term. We're going to build something great together. What we talk about today doesn't really matter. What we should understand is our relationship as human beings, understand the type of work and the meaningful nature of that work. Does it accelerate the company's milestones? Are you even thinking about the company's milestones? Are you buying into the company's mission? And if so, we're going to trust each other and make something great together and compensate everybody fairly for it. So I love that we implement that. That's, I think, the way to do it.
A couple of interesting tricks that I've learned in interviews. One is actually I learned that from Reid Hoffman, where he would ask people, "What do you want to, if they're joining Kiwi, for example, what do you want to do after you leave Kiwi?" So I'm not asking them how they want to grow into the company, but what they would want to do after they leave. And it's interesting because first it takes them by surprise, but also it makes it look like you as a founder, as a hiring manager, you're empathetic to what the bigger aspirations for that individual is. You will get a lot of information from that question than asking a question that's, hey, like, what's your biggest strength or weakness, or what do you want to do, into which they can throw it. But also it just levels the playing field, and people know that, hey, this person knows that at some point I'm going to leave. That's okay. So I don't have that. I'll put that aside and focus on that. The other trick is by Daniel Kahneman, who wrote Thinking Slow and Fast. He talks about trying to delay your intuitions. And I don't remember exactly how he defines it, but I think the meta advice is try to build a framework and lines around which you're trying to put a candidate into those categories. So think about critical thinker. Is this person a hustler? Is this person XYZ? And try to delay as much as you can your broader intuition on that person, how they walked in the room, or the handshake. Sometimes we often decide on whether we want to hire or not the person just from the first minute or two. And so trying to be also not just about knowing that these are traps, but trying to trick your brain into avoiding these traps is also a very important one. But I want to shift gears so now we talked about hiring. I want to talk about feedback loops and performance review. So now you've hired your team, your first people. We'll talk about firing later because that's a tougher one. But you've hired. How do you make sure you are, keeping the team aligned? Going for that goal? You're not at let's say you're not at a 5-6 person team. It's not too big, but it's also, you can't just micromanage people. Scientist founder might have a tendency to dive in and do things themselves, and at this point you know that you can't do everything yourself. You have to delegate. So how do you make sure that you can move that transition from that 2 to 3 co-founders to 6 to 10 people, putting structures and systems and whatever you do to kind of keep everyone aligned? And anyone from the three, please feel free to pick it up. Nan-Wei, do you want to go? I'll pick you.
Okay. Well, I know that I will not be good at it, so I picked a co-founder who has a lot of experience doing it. So I had, after the first company, second company, we're all small. We have a small team. Second company is we're doing engineering consulting, really. Like, I was at some point managing a lot of engineers, but 30, 40 people, that is an engineering project. It's not really a company that has different functions. So my co-founder is very, very, very structured. So we are a very small team, and then you already set up all the functions. And then just like, let's draw an org chart. this is what you do and this is what I do. So there's check and balance, not just, oh, here is a task and he's doing all that. So it's pretty clear, like, this is what you do, this is what I do. And I think that's a very, very good way to do it from the very beginning. We have an org chart, we have job
And is that something that you do in collaboration with the team? You know, because we've seen companies and founders where they actually set up org charts and OKRs, objective and key results. We can talk a bit more about that as well. But how you set up where you talk to the team and say, hey, this is, I think, what you should do, and they give you back feedback, or is it mostly, no, this is what everyone should do? You know, it's kind of very disciplined, very structured, top down, or is it kind of back and forth?
There's a conversation.
Yeah.
There's a conversation, and I think I mean, again, because we are in healthcare, so a lot of people comes from a very hierarchical like background, and so what has been very helpful is even when we are like 10 people, now we are 20 plus people, it's pretty nice to come up with a structure that's more like it, so they can feel like they have a way path. Like, I am customer success, their next step would be senior customer success. It's all man-made. It's all, you created that structure, but then you say, here are the next 4 steps for you to become an executive. That is a good idea. So because they have something to work towards, and there is the OKR is, okay, is it a 1 year, 2 year? So we try to simulate a larger corporation, as opposed to, I know there are companies that try to hire me and give me a job title and say, you'll be a ninja. Like we didn't do that.
Hey, Nan-Wei, let me ask a follow-up question there, and then maybe Wardah, you can get your comment on it too. You're describing sort of this org chart as a non-static, like it's dynamic thing. People have this opportunity to grow within their own path or in their department. But there's sometimes this really interesting challenge I know that I faced as an entrepreneur too, where some people are really good as individual contributors and they're not so good at managers. And other people maybe are really well suited to become managers, but then, you know, aren't as good as individual contribution. How do you think about that dynamic picture of responsibilities for people like who may aspire to go up into higher ranks, but maybe aren't so good at managing, or for other people who, you know, have the other problem?
So I think the engineers all make that really clear when they don't want to be manager, which is a very cute thing. Don't you dare give me a promotion. I don't want to manage people. Like if several, what our best engineers all said the same thing. So okay, we said this is what you're gonna do, but then you need to accept that someone will manage your work and will have the manager title, which doesn't mean that they are, you know, it's just a structure and check and balance. Your job is a project manager, product manager. It's just what you do. It doesn't mean that you're better or not, because I think that what's that book that talks about how the corporate America created a layer of middle management that's just all really terrible at their jobs. Forgot the book. There's a book about
There's probably many. Yeah.
Yeah, so many. And it's like but you don't want people to manage when they are really bad. Maybe. But I think that's how we've been doing it. That, like, obviously it's small company. Everything is far from like a well-run machine with an HR department where we can file complaints. But you know, we try.
Wardah, how do you think about org charts and responsibilities and how that changes over time?
And one thing I want to double click on, which we just skimmed over, is OKRs and kind of maybe just a very quick summary of what it is and how you've used it as well. Just since we just skimmed over it very quickly.
Wardah?
Wardah, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I don't think we've done the org chart well, so we kind of kept it more flat. So there's no like senior, etc. Like we are just starting to. So till now, you know, everybody was, even if you came as you were a senior machine learning scientist somewhere, you came as a machine learning scientist, everybody was a machine learning scientist. There was no 1, 2, 3. It made our life easy, but I would say, there comes a time when you have to start putting that structure, or at least like, people after a few years in the company, they want to see that they're progressing. And that's where now we're trying to put some structure in. Like now we do have a senior role. So we have a senior software engineer as like the first role, but so far it hasn't been too much on process. Process has come in as a very incrementally, if needed, and very small increments as needed. So if we see an issue, we bring something in and slowly iterate on it till it gets better in a way. So whether it's like documentation or, now we're going to, we will make sure that every meeting gets documented, and then trying to make sure, okay, now we're going to add agendas to it, so adding it's a little slowly, but doing like small incremental steps rather than like huge, big process changes, because a lot of people joining startups don't like process as well, at least in my experience. They want to do it because they want to really do things fast, and take more ownership, get more responsibility. So at least that's been our philosophy so far. Will it change later on? Probably, but so far that's how we're doing it. Regarding OKRs, I think OKRs are tough. I think we've kind of gone different ways with OKRs. Here I think the more important thing is actually key results rather than the whole OKR framework and all that stuff. This is at least my philosophy right now, which is, and why key results are so important is because you're talking about results rather than trying to measure work. So getting into that philosophy sooner of, what is the key result? Like, what are you trying to achieve is, I think, the most important thing. And how do you measure it so that you can actually do how you progress? I think we went very read, book on how do you do OKRs, and that the objective has to be like really ambitious and, all that like very inspiring and all that stuff. Maybe it works for everyone, but I think for me, the crux of it is the key result, and really defining what that key result is. Everybody aligned on the result rather than a task to do. So it's not a task list, it's a key result. So it's a framework. If you guys don't know, it's called Objective Key Results, OKRs. It came from back in the day, I think Intel, and then it has... Yeah, and it got famous because of Google implementing it. But I think, again, in a different size of a startup, you might want to spend different amount of time on doing it. But I think the sooner you start implementing the key result aspect of it, I think the sooner everybody gets aligned towards the goal and starts measuring their results rather than how many hours they did something, or, the actual motion that they did rather than the action they took and the result they got.
That's very interesting, and I think I just want to re-summarize two things that you said, Wardah, that are extremely important. One is process, or first principles thinking over process. So it's not about you should do this or that. It's basically saying what do we stand for. So for example, we are about results, but we're not about putting your report on time. So sometimes you break it down into what they are actually versus just a process. And the second thing that's actually quite interesting, as you were talking, you mentioned, we talked a bit earlier about culture. So for example, if our culture is to be collaborative, you have the ability to use the tool of performance review to actually make sure it's collaborative. So for example, what I've done in one of my previous startups is that if let's say you have the engineering department and the product department and the marketing department, let's call them department just for simplicity, and then you want them to collaborate much more, then you can maybe ask a key result that one of the companies, if I'm marketing, one of my key results, I can actually ask another team to contribute to that key result. So I can actually almost I have part of my key results are actually, I'm able to use others to help me contribute to those. So your key result as someone else would be to actually help me deliver on that. So it becomes kind of, more instilling it not just from a big slogan, but actually in terms of pushing it to do that. And social engineering it. But Adam, same question to you on org structure, but also in your case, you've had the ability, or you've had the chance to play a bit and shuffle people around. Maybe also talk about that as the org is growing, moving people around, and how to think about the sensitivities there as well.
So I would say as the org is growing, the challenge set is also constantly changing. And I really think that going from that 2 or 3 group of co-founders to even 6 and to going to 12, you know, it's like working at an entirely different company every 4 or 5 months. It's changing so fast around you that the relevant skill sets for you and the people around you are also constantly changing, and reminding yourself and really trying to work on what matters and what the goal is. You know, that's the goal can be convince some of your smartest friends to join you in this crazy endeavor, you know, one set of months, and then the next it's scrape some cash, and then the next is to build a prototype, and then to build your focus gets more and more meta as the founder, and finding other people to fill in the gaps. It's definitely interesting, you know, and a lot of that process, like sounds like what's happening at Overjet is happening at Kiwi too, where you don't really need minutes when everyone can always be around the table. But these processes are slowly creeping in as folks can't do things. The activities of the company are getting spread, but they'd still like to know what's going on. So bringing in formal agendas and meeting minutes and all this is just, we're really trying to drive the company's activity and holes to pull process in, opposed to trying to shove process in where it's not needed.
So I want to add something about like what I did before Figure 8. I was working on 2 different projects at Google. And both projects grew from when I joined about 1 person till like 400, and another grew to 1,000 people in the course of 2 years. And I remember the now the VP, I think, he said to me when the first 3 months I started the project, we spent 7 hours in the 8-hour working day together every day to figure out exactly what we're working on. And then I think 3 years later, it takes maybe a whole month to book 15 minutes of his time. But that's really fine. But he made it really clear from day one, you're the founding team, but what's going to happen is we're going to spread out. If you're doing R&D, then there's the R&D people, but there's so much about building a product that, you know, everyone's importance will, like, you're the most important one at the founding stage. But what's going to happen is if you want to move on, just let me know. And I'm already seeing a lot of people, like there are people that's really good at the very beginning. There are people good at the growth stage. There are people that's going to take you public, and they're not the same set of people. So to be really clear about that, and like we're growing, that's why we're not spending 7 hours together every day. It's something like, to put it in a nice way, you know, we have too many people to deal with. So how do you evolve around that with the process and not, you know, be really upfront about that? And I think that's what I am facing right now. It's like, okay, we have a structure. I have a limited hour in a day. How I'm going to spend my hour is the following. Here's my calendar. You can all see.
That's great. I think underlying a lot of this part of the conversation around OKRs and kind of group management towards objectives is individual performance. How do you think about feedback on individuals? Do you guys now, at this stage of the game, have you started implementing performance reviews? At what sort of regularity? Are they, you know, from their reporting manager only, or are you doing more complex structures? How do you think about evaluating each individual's personal performance and giving them that feedback? Maybe Wardah, you can start.
So we actually, I think, started with performance reviews a little sooner. The first time we did it was more so that everybody kind of understands what everybody else thinks. So we made, you know, we were, I think, 6 or 7 at that time. Everybody reviewed everyone. So that was you know, a good, you know, at least learning of like what people think of you, etc., and what you think you need to improve on. And I think now it's more in terms of, at least we haven't done a full on like the whole company reviewing everyone performance review, but we do have now like one-on-ones and like feedback being provided. I think I've heard the cadence should be at least weekly or bi-weekly, or but twice a month. we are still doing it once a month, I think. So I want to, at least for my direct reports, I want to move to like twice a month, but at least for now it's, you know, once a month. But it is you have to come prepared. It's for both parties. You're coming prepared, thinking about like what can you do, how do you give constructive or feedback as well, and ways that that they can actually use to improve. But I think it's tough. I think feedback is always tough. People take things very personally, and it's never doing it in a way that I think it's an art. Like, I think the more you do it, the better you get. But there is but putting in a lot of thought into it. I think that's needed.
And how about you, Adam? Are you doing a lot of one-on-ones? Are you doing personal performance reviews?
So I, as a technical founder too, and largely a technical mission, my one-on-ones serve a couple purposes. And we sort of sneak in the performance review with also a chunk of time to pick Adam's brain about a technical challenge, which I also personally really enjoy, because then I get to dabble in fun projects like that. And in some ways, it's what is the depth of a problem someone is facing at that time, and if they're reaching out for help, that's a great indication. If someone's reaching out for help on something, they're making progress in some way. You won't have to worry about people who never are asking for help, to be honest, and say that everything's going all right. So we do it for that reason, and that has worked really well. But as the company grows, not everyone's going to have a technical challenge that they'll want my take on, and it is hard, and it's this really tough balance as a founder of trusting and letting go, versus really trying to dig in and seeing what's happening under the hood of everything. But yeah, I mean, it's that the technical one is weekly. I try to get in some personal time with each person too, just to check how everyone's doing outside of work. I think that's a huge component as well. People have on weeks and off weeks, and it's also really interesting to understand the work cadence of each person. Humans seem to have this natural flow of, some people might have a 4 months on and 1 month kind of off, and then they'll have this back on, and noticing cycles of everyone, and to level set expectations has been really interesting for me.
There's actually a question from Andrea in the chat, which I was going to ask you as well, Adam, and everyone, is how do you make sure that as a manager or as a leader that you get feedback from your employees? Maybe I'll add to that as well another question, which is very along the same lines. How do you make sure also that you let people voice concerns earlier on upwards? So whether they're in a meeting and they don't agree with something, how do you make sure that you have this ability to empower people to also show early signs? So early sign warnings, but also give you feedback. Maybe Adam.
Sure. So one is by level setting and saying the floor is open for this. We're going to have this private conversation, and having it be both ways is very healthy. And often it's a great way to let off a lot of tension. Those conversations are tough. It's important, I think, back to that comment of vulnerability that I made, to even in the hiring process, try to recognize, is this someone you can be honest with, and someone that you can grow to trust, if not trust right away. Because that's a huge component of receiving feedback. It's a lot. I think you really only can receive feedback that you'll act upon if you trust the person. If you think that they're really caring about your self-interest as a human being, caring about the company as a team and a mission, where the feedback is coming from is a huge part of, am I going to listen to it?
Nan-Wei, how do you encourage your team to give you feedback, or how do you make sure that you as a leader also just keep getting feedback, whether it's from your team or from wherever you find that, your board, your investors?
I think I think to allocate specific time for that is important. Like we do have bi-weekly all hands meeting, and then there is a time like, well, say something. What is your feedback? And I think I mentioned earlier, I want to start the drawn to starting my own companies because I feel like they're creating a work culture everyone can just talk freely about how they think is really important for me. So I think we have all kinds of different channels, Slack channels. There are Slack channels that's designed for you to complain about things. And I will probably I will start them and complain about all kinds of things, but then I will be actively complaining. And just here's my feedback here's my feedback there about different topics. So if you do have an issue about something, then you can go to that Slack channel and then see like, now we're already complaining here. So I'm gonna echo that. So I have you have
add us all to it.
Time and space for that.
Can you add everyone on this call to that Slack channel?
It's kind of like in a store. Normally they have this mailbox where if you have any customer feedback, this is where you put the feedback, right? So I'm like, I want that. So we have Slack channel.
Yeah, actually, Netflix famously also had that, where they would allow everyone to give not anonymous, actually, was direct feedback through this kind of leaderboard. And at the beginning was a bit kind of weird, but then at some point they saw kind of interesting reactions. And those who were took it personal, ultimately there's that risk, but it's not the culture that they wanted. So, it's also self-selects as well. If that's what you want to do, or the culture you want to build, you can self-select for that. Wardah, how about you? Like, how do you also incentivize people to talk about early warnings in general, not just maybe people issues, but just, hey, like there's something going on that's wrong, and I'm afraid to say it, but I want to be encouraged to say that I think we're off track, or I think we're messed up here.
So one thing I actually do is, the one-on-one event is actually structured in 3 parts. The first part is anything that they want to discuss about. So usually like 10 minutes or so. The second part is on OKRs. So like we go through key results, basically, and any feedback that I have. And the third part is actually, I basically ask them the question, how can I improve? So that's, it's not like, what's wrong with me? Like, the question is in a way that people can say something, and here it's like, okay, but everybody like knows that that's something that I really do care about, right? So even, for example, I did say, okay, here's my New Year's resolution of how I want to improve, in this role, right? Like, so kind of saying like, it being a part of something, like you're helping me if you're telling me ways I can improve. So I think that's at least around myself, around the company itself. I don't know in terms of, at least so far, people, I don't know if it's everyone, but I think I have enough like, people in the company who are, now this kind of sounds a little weird, but like they're like my ears in a way. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm seeing this, or I'm feeling this, or somebody might like, and it's always like, so they'll just Slack me and let me know, and then I'm like, okay, let me talk to that person myself, or I saw something, you not in this chat, but I heard this, or something like that, right? So I think there is like, I don't know if it's like a tattletale going on or whatever this is, but there are people in the company who really care about the company, and they actually care that like people are not, if they're complaining about something or something like that, and they're doing it even in an environment where, of course, they're not like, nothing that people say we're taking it like any against them, even if it's like something, so we're trying to create an environment where people can just like openly say something, but not everybody is the same. Not everybody is, will come to me directly and say it. But there are people in the company that I trust who, who do care about the company a lot, and kind of trying to make sure that, nothing is going wrong. And usually I get to hear it till now, but probably that will change later on.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the tricks I might share on this is, as a CEO, if you ever hear someone giving you a feedback that is for you, amplify that. So if someone says something, you say, okay, and then make it clear on the next all hands that, hey, thank you for such and such for giving me that, and I acted on this and I changed that. So make it super clear that you actually are open for this, and that's encouraged, even if it's something that sometimes is very simple, or sometimes you can even engineer for that. For the last 20 minutes of this panel, maybe we can go through rapid question and answers taken from the floor. Some of those might be more than rapid, but we'll actually pick on one of the panelists to answer one question, so we can go through many of those. We might pick founders given on knowing who might answer a question, but we might also just throw one to the floor and one of you can jump on it. This first one I'm gonna that I find I read is from Haruro-san, sorry, Haruro-san, and then he asked a question that I'm gonna ask to Adam, and how to deal with professional relationships mixed with personal relationships. So you had a good friend of yours was your co-founder.
Yeah, I mean, a childhood friend that I respected and grew up with, incredibly technical mind, co-founder, still a great friend to this day. He wasn't able to handle the chops of growing and management, and it was too much. It took a lot of work between us. He was able to recognize it, but we really took sort of the Netflix approach of, we can be incredible personal friends, but what we're building here is really it's not a family. There's love for the mission, but there shouldn't be unconditional love for each other. And we're building a professional sports team, and we're all like the best components of a robot. And if one component's not there, we're going to need to change it out in this little bit of a cold way, but to be proud of that sports team and its performance is what we were focusing on. And then for as long as we have buy-in on that, the professional relationships can still be very powerful.
This next one I'm gonna throw at Nan-Wei. There's a question here that's around, Melissa asks around title inflation. So she's interested in knowing about concerns around title inflation with early employees and how to reconcile that once you start to hire more experienced specialists at the later stages. And maybe kind of an added nuance to that is, how do you think about demotion? Someone's not.
That's why someone tried to hire me as a ninja once. So at the very beginning, you don't give them title that is like that fits into the society norms. You just like, you are the lead in this area. You are the technical lead. You are the software lead. And then over time, you're like, okay, well, that's we trust structure, and then we be creative until you hit the point where, okay, there's 10 people in the technical thing. I think we can talk about this. And I see this over and over in different places that I've been to, and especially like we are always on the innovation side from my background. So people will give you weird titles just for that reason.
That's great. There's this question with Wardah. I know it's something you've been thinking about as well. Is do you also do social activities together after work to improve the company's culture? What kind of activity do you do that? And maybe kind of an added thing there is part of your culture is also knowing things about things that people don't say no, like, and it's a convoluted way to say you're working in dental and some of your engineers might not know, but you're now like all of you are almost expert dentists. So the social activities, but also how do you include some of the areas that you want your team to grow into?
So for social, I think we just like choose, like let the company decide on what. We started off with a thing, we made it, we started off a taboo as a game, which, it's fun, it's easy to play with. Our recent game was Among Us. I think a lot of people are playing that as a game. But choosing, now it's like more of a, I like initially I started it off, but now, people have started taking on, they'll suggest a game and then everybody will do it. So that's I would say the activity. Then we have like a lunch and learn, which is, yes, you get to learn about dentistry, but, it's a lunch as well. And so I would count it as social activity. I still have the grads student mentality here, free food. I think that's a great incentive. But then there are other people, we do just hang out with as well. Some of my colleagues have become friends, and but we try to do like a company-wide hangout as well.
Has
Cool.
that helped?
Yeah, maybe I'll do the next one. I'll take the liberty of asking my own question. I'm going to throw a tough one to Adam. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is a tough one, I think, for startups. A lot of times you end up building the initial team from your friends. And a lot of times we're friends with people who are similar. And yet all the research says that we should be implementing diversity very early. That's how we build diverse organizations as we get bigger, and those are more resilient and they outperform. Like, how do you think for Kiwi about, going outside of your normal comfort areas as you're building the team? How do you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion as you do hiring?
When starting the company, I was this double-edged sword. If I was blessed to be part of this incredible community, I grew up building robots for these BattleBot robot fighting competitions and had a network that I had no idea was so talented and so large that I could pool amazing talent from. However, like Clavin said, these are all people who are relatively similar to me. That demographic was, you're looking at it. And so that's great in a company when you have a million things to do and you need to hire really quickly and build prototypes and do all of this. But it's also awful because a lot of their perspectives I already have, and my perspective alone is not nearly enough. So we're recognizing that now, and we are making big pushes into it. But it's something Kiwi is definitely a failure at this, and we're taking it to heart. It's tough all the way around, and it's diversity in every single way. It's how I think about it. Really is it's just a major action item. That's really the only thing to do, and it's not just important, I think, to hire different ethnicities or different genders. I think it's much more important for those people, especially to not even be junior hires. I think the key here is to hire people of different perspectives who have major equity stakes, who have major ownership and major responsibility. That's key. If Kiwi is successful, we want those people to be able to go and create and build many other things, not just to go get another job. So that's really my take and where a lot of my work is.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. You always keep talking about that, and so if anyone has thoughts as well to share or communities that to point Adam to expand his pool of hiring as well, you should reach out to Adam. Nan-Wei, there's a tough question around letting someone go, and I know that you had that experience with an executive in your company as well. Maybe tell us more about. Feel free to share whatever you want to share, or avoid sharing what you don't want to share. But it would be good kind of to hear, if you can abstract a bit, but what went wrong in the hire, how you decide to fire, the time, the warning signs, and how you approach it. And again, feel free to skip anything that's confidential. Or
Yeah, maybe no PII, right?
Yeah.
No, we made a few hires again in healthcare. So engineering background, very, very technical team. We were desperate to look for domain experts in domains that we don't understand enough, meaning that it's really easy if you have the perfect resume in the domain that we don't understand. From our perspective, the resume looks amazing. And it's really hard to evaluate the person. So right now, even like we are hiring people, I'm even asking consultants to help me interview the people that we need to hire, as opposed to making my own decisions, because you don't know what you don't know. So we hired very, very, very fancy senior people that like growing up in Asia, you will respect that personality so much. And it's just so wrong that there's the internal conflict of, I don't understand you, I respect you so much, but what exactly do you do? So in order to tell this person, what exactly do you do here? And that they don't listen to you because they also feel like you should respect me so much, was a tough one. But I think you just learn. That's one of the reasons why performance review is so important. If you talk to your labor law lawyer, good documentation for a raining day. What, like, how are you saying how? You just know, like, you're like, wait, I don't think the investment, return on investment is right for the job that I think you should be doing. And then I just, like, again, first time CEO, like, trying to compare, search the job title. Are you doing exactly what you're doing? And interview similar companies and say, for this person that with that job title, what exactly do they do? Mine is doing this. Does that sound right to you? I think, like, when you learn, you're like, yeah, that's not right. Then you get all the emotional support from the fantastic investors, like the E14 heroes, and they hold your hand and you just make it happen. But I think there's a check and balance, and then I think what's really important for me is that I do want to make sure that whoever you're letting go knows it's coming. It shouldn't happen overnight. That's why performance review is important. Before I pull the trigger, I just performance review a lot. And you're like, things are not going well, right? You know it's coming. So I think that's also a better way. You know, have the honest conversation. They know it's coming. There's a PIP plan. A performance improvement plan you can put people on, but also, like, just ease them their way out, as opposed to, like, it doesn't work out into like, you know, it doesn't work out, get out. That's not really bad for the culture as well.
And Nan-Wei, how did you manage the rest of the team? So you were looking to fire someone, and then there are other team members that if you fire someone, there's always chatters that happen and worries. And so how do you make sure that you don't affect others more morally, that you say the reasons, etc.? How did you handle that?
So that's why we have the performance also check in with, like, in front of everyone. So I make sure everyone knows someone's underperforming, so that when I make the decision, everyone, like, so far, every time I fire someone, the feedback is good job, Natalie. It's never, what have you done? It's always, yes, we saw it coming. Like, it must be tough for you. Do you want me to hold your hand? So I think it's just, like, it's transparency, and then especially about the performance. And if everyone have a rough idea of what other peoples are working on, just a rough idea, and then you will see when they underperform, and then it will be really obvious who can't make the cut for that dream team Adam is building.
Not easy.
Hey, Wardah, similar question, but maybe more not on firing, but on rearranging. So someone different, and that's a meta question. I'm not saying that you have that in your organization, because I don't think that applies, but just how you think of that. You have someone in your team, let's say, who has been great for chapter 1 of the company, comes chapter 2 of growth and repeatability and scale, and that person is not performing as to that level, and you need to either demote, you need to kind of change their role. I'm sure that's something you think about, because I know that you think a lot about, like, team structures and kind of keeping everyone kind of up to high standards. Is that something that you've given some thoughts to, of how you'd want to handle it? Because it almost always happens in a startup.
So I think, you know, the interesting thing is, as you're growing fast, some people are growing as fast, or, like, they're really, you know, increasing the responsibility, etc. But then you start seeing other people, like, starting to reach their limit, and, you know, they can just grow further. We haven't come to a point where it is, you know, in terms of, I think because we had this, like, very flat structure, other than a few people, you know, that had a higher, like, level or something like that. I think it hasn't been like a demotion, etc., that we've worked with at this time. It's been, you know, some people, you know, are now being considered more junior, and some people are being considered more senior internally, kind of. So I don't think we had to deal with that yet a lot, because of that more flat flat structure, but we also have people having roles which is not what they're doing. So I think there is a time coming where we have to kind of do an internal soul searching here of like, what is the role that you're actually doing and what is your title? And let's restructure this. It is a hard conversation. Probably that's why I'm avoiding it a little, where things kind of, if things are just working, why shake it up? But some people start using titles as well, which they don't have, right? So I think there is a with that, at least what I've done is, if somebody starts using a title which, say they're not the head of software and they start calling themselves head of software just because, we do make sure that they do know that they're not, they don't have that title. But other than that, it hasn't been more of, demoting anyone at this time.
This has been really great. I think we're nearly out of time. So maybe one last question that we can ask each of our esteemed guests tonight. So maybe Nan-Wei first, like, is there a piece of advice that you've gotten from a book or from a mentor and your management, your leadership journey that you'd like to share? Like something that you reflect on often? Any good advice you'd like to leave everyone with?
I mean, I like I think like, what is it? Warren Buffett said that? Like, if you're doing something that you enjoy doing, then you're working for the rest of your life. So I think if I'm happy about what I do, and I've been working like 14 hours every day. I'm a little bit exhausted right now, but it's like in general very cheerful, and people are cheerful around me when I ask, like, we're all working till like midnight, we're cheerful. That means okay. Once I was working, and then same thing right now. It's Thursday, it's Friday already, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Friday. And someone I work with said, that means you are so lucky. You don't even perceive time. You enjoy doing this so much. And I think I would say that we are very lucky that we can be doing things that we like to do.
That's great. Adam, you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I just love what Nan-Wei said. And it's one thing that was interesting about a recent quarantine period that I had to do for some travel was I realized I felt bored for an hour. And that was the first time I had felt the feeling of boredom in years. And that's just incredibly lucky. So I'm very thankful for that. And it's definitely the roller coaster I wouldn't change for anything. So definitely a couple I would say is on that note is it's so important for me to stop and smell the roses. I go into this massive workshop we have. I see the big logo on the wall, and I think it's really important for me sometimes to just slow down and take a look at it and absorb it all in and know just how awesome this all is and how wonderful it is. And it's real. We're building these things with our bare hands, and in years from now, we're going to look back and think like, man, those early days were amazing, weren't they? So I think that's a really important one. And to document it. I'm trying to take more pictures and thinking about Adam 10 years from now, wanting to look back at this time.
That's cool. That's great.
Remember that little shop in Boston we had?
Oh yeah! Wow, what a dump.
Yeah, exactly. But now I'm so fondly. Yeah, we had the second floor of an old lithography place. The building, I'm sure, is fallen over by now, but I love that.
Yeah, that was great. How about you, Wardah? Any closing thoughts or advice you'd like to share?
I think for me, it's reminding myself that in the end, you are on a mission to change things, right? Like you're on a mission to improve oral health. So as we take that very seriously, and for us, it's all about how do we help our customers, etc. But I think thinking of your people you are on their team as they're as important as your customer as well. I think this is something that I learned from one MIT professor who always was even he had the most important thing. If you actually wanted to chat with him, he would even he would make the time to take out the time and spend with you, etc. Make you feel you felt very important. But the fact that as important your customers are, your employees are as important, and not, canceling meetings on them, or, doing something internally just because it's just internal, and external is what matters. I think that's something that I learned by experience, both where with some MIT professors, and I think that's something that I've taken more internally, at least in the company, where I would not try to cancel a meeting, even though if I might have some deadline, unless it becomes an important thing. So taking as much care about your employees or people on the team as you would do about your customers who pay you is, I think, something that is very important while you're building your company.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Joseph, I think maybe Habib, any
yeah, I was gonna say one last thing from my side. So we tend to, when we are on to building companies, we sometimes get stuck into this big race of just going at it and crushing it in Silicon Valley's words and going in the next round, etc., and building a great company and raising. But we also forget to be human first. And it's something that is, is extremely important, especially when you look around you on this community, at the Nuts and Bolts. I mean, to me, Nuts and Bolts has been the start of my founder career, and I have so much to thank this community for. And I just advise you to all just look around you, whoever it is, be friends with, cherish these connections. 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, I'm thankful I did that. So this is one overarching advice I want to make sure everyone leaves with. Joseph, thank you very much for hosting us tonight.
Well, Jace, thank you. This is a great panel. A lot of really important issues discussed with some real practical input. And it was all done pretty much last minute and just amazing. So thank you all. And I think maybe you've committed to do this every year now, but we'll see.
Of course.
Yeah,
all right.
You can't check out of this hotel, right? Just a couple of logistic things. For people taking the course for credit, there's the sign-up sheet is in the chat, if you haven't seen that. And thanks to the class for suggestions on the breakout rooms. We're going to circle around and think about how to do those better, and we'll get back to you. And Sam and Claire, is there any last-minute things that we need to do from logistics? Or are we good?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you on Tuesday when we will continue the journey of Nuts and Bolts of New Ventures. Have a great weekend.